Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Welcome back to Freedom Fest 2016. You're listening to the SHR Media Network. Thank you so much for joining us at Planet Hollywood in Las Vegas, Nevada, is where we're broadcasting from. Sitting in with us right now is political blogger, activist. Would activist be a good word as well?
Activist would be a good word, yes.
Okay. Michelle Liberman, good morning.
Good morning.
It is morning still for the next 2.5 minutes, so I was technically correct. You write a blog called The Freedom Friend.
I do.
You are here at Freedom Fest.
Yes.
How are you liking it so far?
I love Freedom Fest. I've been coming to Freedom Fest since 2010, I believe, or 2009. So it's a great place, especially because I'm in the entertainment industry. I'm surrounded by a lot of liberals. It's refreshing to be around like-minded people.
Well, and so that was going to be my next comment, and give people a little bit of your history. You live in the liberal Hollywood world as far as work went for a long, long time.
Yes.
You said you're a reformed, or as I like to call a saved Democrat, and you've come back. Tell a little bit about that journey. What it was like working in Hollywood, surrounded by the liberal machine, and then what made you kind of realize that maybe that's not the best way to go?
Well, I was in the entertainment industry since I've been a teenager, and I lived in New York City, and then I moved to Los Angeles, and I've been a liberal most of my life. So I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. And I was surrounded by it. I don't think I ever even met a conservative, and if I did, they didn't bring topics up with me.
Well, they probably knew their surroundings, and they were afraid to out themselves and be eliminated from the community. So
exactly.
So, at some point, what was the awakening for you? When you were like, man, this just isn't right?
So my catalyst is the catalyst a lot of people had, which was Ron Paul in 2007. I started to watch his campaign speeches, and it was pretty much the first time I was even bothering to watch a campaign. I mean, like, our whole world is entertainment. Like, there's nothing more important than what she's wearing.
Right.
And
which is almost the problem in this country right now.
It is absolutely
reality TV has just jammed that further down kids' brains, where I got to worry about what Kim was wearing, et cetera, versus I got to worry about the political debates and who's making what choices.
Exactly. So I was watching Ron Paul, and he was saying so many great things they were really clear, they were really relatable, they made sense to my life, and in one respect, they were kind of taking away that whitewash and that photoshopped reality that I thought was liberalism and this fantasy world, and so it's a little bit scary, but it also felt empowering to understand, especially when you're talking about sound money. It was the first time I was hearing about fiat currency, learning about sound money, and I felt more empowered because everything seemed really mysterious. When you're a liberal, sometimes when things come to you, if success comes to you, if money, especially when you're in the entertainment industry, it's like a lottery ticket.
Right.
You don't even know how you got it. Like, you were auditioning, you were doing what you're supposed to do, but you don't really know how you all of a sudden got this wealth or got this success. Whereas if you're a business person and you understand that you made something valuable to trade with the community of a service or a product, you understand the what creates value and how you built that. But so for a lot of liberals, especially in the entertainment industry, things are really mysterious. It's like luck. It's like the stars aligned. I mean,
It's like the roulette wheel downstairs.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, 00, I win.
It's exactly the roulette
Cost me
wheel.
$5. I just won $250. Perfect. Let's go.
Yes.
And there's no motivation for them to change their thinking a lot of times too, because those who stay successful, they just keep getting the money, and they never reflect back. Not all of them, because obviously there are some people in Hollywood, the entertainment industry, who've more recently have come out about their politics. But also at a detriment. And I specifically think of James Woods, who will probably never act in a major movie again because he has been so politically open and has been a pit bull for conservatism the last couple of years. But he's the first one to say he will probably never get another major production again because of that. Do the conservatives, and I'm sure you know more of them now as time has gone on, do you ever hear that more and more, that the retribution for being who they are is scary for them? because it is still their livelihood.
The retribution
For being a conservative in the entertainment industry.
You know, it's difficult because when you realize the truth and you realize how important it is, all of a sudden the importance of your career, especially, I mean, James Wood did a really good run, and I think he's done really well. I mean, I don't know what his financial situation is. Hopefully he's at a point now where even if he doesn't get a major movie, he'll be okay.
I'm guessing he makes a little bit more than I do.
I'm guessing he makes maybe a little bit more than I do too. But because then at some point your priorities just kind of shift, and all of a sudden, because a lot of these actors, I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard like Shia LaBeouf, like when he's been interviewed, he has said things that actually boggle my mind, and I'm an actor, and he's like, acting is everything. Like he's like, that's the number one priority in my life. You know, not family, not, I don't know, helping people, nothing. That is the number one priority. And I think a lot of actors are like that. And when you have something so superficial as your number one priority, and it like becomes all consuming. And then when all of a sudden you are open to the realities of life, you're open to truth, and you realize like how it affects your life and everybody and your world and your country and America, all of a sudden your career doesn't seem quite as important. So, I mean, I know there's closet conservatives. I know there's closet libertarians in Hollywood. I'm hard pressed to find them. I'm surrounded by liberals.
Right.
I've struggled. Once I started learning things, I struggled to keep my mouth shut, and I don't know how my career would have gone, because I left LA in 2013 because I met my now husband in Singapore. So I moved to Singapore, but I was on track to like get my own television show. I was right there. Like all my friends who we were all on that same track, now they all have their own TV shows. 2 of them have their own production companies. So they're doing really well, but I left that track for my husband. So I don't know if my belief in being libertarian and all these liberty principles would have like steered my career off anyway. I'm just not sure. So
then you stepped away from the entertainment industry for a little bit to get married, but you also started your blog. And tell us a little bit about that.
So I started The Freedom Friend, which is a blog that is meant to simplify the message of liberty and help, especially mainstream women, but both genders. But it's supposed to help people really understand through kitchen table topics how liberty is actually a nicer, prettier, better system than the liberal ideas. And I started the Freedom Front actually when I was still in LA, and I was almost my outlet because I couldn't talk about it with people in public. So I'm like, I need to put it out there somewhere. So I was almost writing the Freedom Friend like in secret, and I was publishing it, and I knew that none of my friends were going to see it. Nobody's looking that up, and so it was my way of being able to like say what I wanted to say. And recently I was just talking to Matt Welch from Reason about this, because once in a while I'll say something on Facebook, my personal Facebook, and he was like, he just avoids it now. But sometimes my liberal friends write such incredibly, it's like reading the wish list of a 5-year-old. It doesn't, do you know what I'm saying? Like they're talking about like a Santa Claus world or an Easter Bunny world, and they actually think that this can be reality. And so sometimes, and the problem with their fantasy world is that it wants to take away my freedom, it wants to take away my resources and my money to provide it for them. And so it's not just an exchange of ideas. Their ideas are not benign, in my opinion. My ideas are benign because I don't want to infringe on their freedom. I don't want to infringe on their money or their taxes, but they want to infringe on mine for theirs. So sometimes I'll say something because I'm like, that's not an idea that provides freedom for everybody.
Well, it's equality and tolerance, but only as long as it's their equality and tolerance, and that's what it's become.
Yes.
You have to tolerate them. They don't have to tolerate us.
And it's very much a you're with us or you're against us, which is what we see more and more from the left's narrative is, hey, if you're not on board with us, then seriously, you should probably die. Mm-hmm. As horrible as that sounds, but their message the last 8 years has become more and more aggressive and militant. And it's borderline frightening sometimes. It is frightening because you have them preaching to you from their ivory tower about how every single thing should be. Most of it's based on emotion. Mm-hmm. None of it's based on facts. And then when you try to have that factual argument, they call you whatever name they could possibly think of. You're a racist, you're a xenophobe, you're a homophobe, you're a jerk, rabble-rouser, all these different things, right-wing lunatic, Tea Party nut, like all these different possible, because they don't want to have that emotional argument, the literal argument, because they're going to lose based on facts, history, statistics, all the things that usually those of us on the right side of the fence use to bolster our arguments. They undermine and undercut those arguments as soon as they can and then have the emotional response. So when you say you're dealing with a 5-year-old, you're very, very true in that statement, because that's a very 5-year-old approach at winning an argument, right? Like, It has nothing to do that there's spilled milk on the floor. It has to do with the fact that I want a cookie.
Yeah.
Right? Well, clean up the milk.
Actually,
give me a
cookie.
cookie.
Does sound good.
Why don't you go get one?
Let's not.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I have a couple girlfriends who are they're on TV shows, and they're so sweet. Like, they're such sweet people. And then one of them said to me a few months ago, I actually think Donald Trump should be dead. I think somebody should murder him. And I was like, you're saying that in jest, right? And she's like, no, I actually think he should be murdered. And I was like, really think about what you're saying.
Right.
You know, do you think your neighbor should be murdered? Like, that is actually like real, that's real hate speech, you know?
Right. And that's beyond hate speech. I mean, hate speech is just going to be, I hate Donald Trump because I think he's a jerk. But you're now advocating, however privately, for the death of a person in politics because of their politics.
Because of their opinion.
And
their ideas.
Can you imagine if anyone from the right side with a voice, a blogger or a host or whatever, said that about Hillary or a current president or former presidents, right? I mean, the world would implode. They would drag that person out of federal court. You'd see them in handcuffs. They'd ruin them. They'd ruin their family. They'd ruin everything they've ever touched. And rightfully so.
Of course.
You should never wish for the demise of another person just because you disagree with them.
Absolutely.
However, we've seen other leftist celebrities say almost the exact same thing in social media, whatever. There's minimal pushback. Those of us on the right go crazy because we're like, how is this even acceptable? And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, they're on the couch with Oprah laughing and just talking about how they had a bad day. And if the whole world moves on like it's nothing. And we lose that argument all the time because mainstream media is run by leftists and they don't want that out there.
And how scary is it that what they're saying is they want to kill somebody based on ideas that are contrary to how they think things should be run.
That's
right?
tolerance.
And that, and then they say about the right, but you guys are like Hitler and you're fascists. Right. And yet Hitler and the fascists killed people because of their ideas that opposed.
Yes.
But you're not allowed to say that because of tolerance.
Yeah, and if you do, you can't. Are you working on any other projects?
Well, I'm writing a book, and it's geared towards women. Okay. And again, it goes deeper than the Freedom Friend. It brings in a lot of research of American history, the central banking, Federal Reserve, and I pull in stories about makeup and jewelry and clothes and kids, because that is what is going to, because all these books that are on the table of Freedom Fest. So this is what I'm going to tell you, okay? Because I was a liberal. I've been in that mindset, and I'm going to talk about this in my speech. When I first started hearing Ron Paul in 2007, his ideas, what he was saying, made sense. But if I walked away from the TV and 10 minutes later, I could not repeat to you what he had just said, okay? Because my indoctrination was so deep. And so I got...
You went back to re-education camp.
Yes. And I got Ron Paul's book, and Revolution, I think, and I started to read that. And it was like reading Chinese. I had a dictionary, and every single page had at least, I had to look up 5 different things. And the one thing that really comes to mind is fiat currency. Never heard of fiat currency before, didn't know what it was. You can look up fiat currency in the dictionary. It gives you a 2-line definition, but that's not enough to really understand what Ron Paul's talking about. There's a backstory behind every single term in his book. There's backstory behind fiat currency. There's backstory about how central banking worked, in England and in America, and how our founding fathers didn't want a central bank. There's backstory to this. And when you don't know that backstory, just reading that book is very superficial. So many things are going over your head. So then I read his book, and then I started to read all, Peter Schiff's books, and Mike Maloney, and Jim Rogers, and all these, and Forbes, all these people who are here. I started to read their books. And I have to say that I probably couldn't have my own singular individual, independent, liberty thought until almost 18 months later. Maybe,
Wow.
Maybe 15, 18 months later. It probably took 30 to 40 books, 18 months. Because what would happen is I'd read a book, I would be like, oh my gosh, totally makes sense. And I'd go out into the world, and I would just go right back into thinking liberal thoughts. Like, I'm like,
It's almost like a drug addiction.
it's totally a drug addiction. It's a complete value system. And I'm a liberal who actively was pursuing this information, and I couldn't get it out. Like, I wanted to get it out of my head because everything I was reading made sense. It was just common sense. It wasn't like hitting this emotional spot. And for me, being an actor, I will say, like, when you're a liberal and there were thoughts in my mind where I was like, what happens if I don't become like a huge celebrity? And it felt good that there might be like a state program that would help me, like if I wasn't making a ton of money. And like it feels good to know there's this safety net.
Right.
And when you're in those sort of professions, it seems scary. Now, I never actually took, like there were months I went without jobs. I never did unemployment. There were a lot of actors who did unemployment. I didn't do that. I never took any state money. For some reason, just whatever was in my core didn't feel right doing it. So never actually done it. But the knowledge of it made me feel better. And so I would read another book. I'd go out into the world. I'd have a conversation with a liberal. They said something, and I'm like, oh, you make sense. And then I couldn't think of the liberty argument. I couldn't think of, like, how do I, come back at them and be like, that's immoral.
Yeah, you got your hit, right? A little bit. It hit the vein. It felt good. Like, you're not supposed to, but it's there again. And then you got to go get clean. You got to go find the right way again.
I had to go back to rehab so many times. Like,
which is a common occurrence in Hollywood, too.
That's true.
But as you have the progression and you start coming out of this illness, this mental illness that's like a drug called liberalism, when did you finally realize you were free of your habit?
I'm not free. I sometimes still go to a thought where I'm like, oh, the state could take care of that, like, better. And the whole thing is like, liberals don't trust other individuals. And so this is like my big argument with them. I'm like, okay, so you don't trust people to give to charity of their own accord. They're like, no, because liberals never give to charity. It's like so many conservatives.
So they don't assume anyone else would because they won't.
Right. And so I'm like, well, if you don't trust the individuals to do charity and give it on their own, why do you trust those same individuals in some organization called government to give it to whoever you think they're giving it to? And then they don't really have it. Oh, because we voted them in. Okay. Well,
well, that's always worked out perfectly. We've never had an issue with that at all. I think your next book should be called like "Surviving the Illness." Rehab. Political rehab.
A liberal's journey from liberal to individual to truth seeker. I don't know. Yeah,
that's a long title.
Yeah, that's too long. That's like could be like the sub, right?
That could be the subtitle.
Yeah, you could just call it like "Surviving the Liberal Drug Overdose," or something to that effect, and have it be your progression.
Former liberal mainline.
If I write liberal in there, because my whole thing is I do want liberals to pick up the book.
Right.
There is no liberal who's going to pick up any of those books on that table. They just won't, because they're already like, oh, it's propaganda.
Right.
Like, it looks like propaganda. If I write the word liberal, it's propaganda. So the book I'm writing right now, like, if you look at it, there's a book called Skinny Bitch.
Yes, I've heard of that, actually.
Okay. So years ago, I was in the airport, and I saw the cover of Skinny Bitch. I'd never heard of the book before. The cover made me cross the bookstore to be like, what is that? Because it's like a skinny cartoon girl. And I, at this time I was a liberal. So I was like, oh, skinny cartoon girl. So I like...
Ooh, something shiny, something shiny.
I'm like jumping over the bookstore to get to... to get to the skinny cartoon girl. And then I bought the book for the plane. And... because I'm like, oh, it's gonna like teach me how to be skinny. So then I buy the book. It was only an hour 10-minute read, and it was hilarious because they curse in it the whole time. But the whole thing is about the food industry and the like disgustingness of like the FDA and like the government and how food lobbyists get laws passed to all of this corruption in the food industry. And like, you would never think that this book is about the mass production of food and the food industry.
When it's titled Skinny Bitch with a pink cover and a cartoon chick on the front.
Exactly. So I'm doing the Skinny Bitch for Liberty Ideas.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Right.
Good. I'm looking forward to it. Where can everyone find your blog?
So it's www.thefreedomfriend.com. Make sure you put the in front of it, and make sure you put the www, because I think people have just been typing in the Freedom Friend and it's not coming up for some reason. So yeah, and I write articles there. I have Freedom Quickies. Freedom Quickies are good because sometimes people really struggle to get through a whole article. You know, so I use images, and I'll use quotes that are really important, and you know, I use a lot of these authors in these quotes, and then it also will direct people to where they can get more information, like the book or the full article if they want to read it.
And social media?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. It's actually under Freedom Girl USA, but I think you can also type in The Freedom Friend and find me. I'm on Facebook under The Freedom Friend. I'm on Instagram under The Freedom Friend. And those Freedom Quickies look really fantastic. They're really pretty. And the whole thing is about prettiness. Like, the world loves beauty. Liberals know how to talk about beauty. Liberals know how to talk about beauty. Like, it's not just visual beauty, it's like what sounds beautiful. And so you have to make liberty sound beautiful. And
well, it is a beautiful thing.
You
just have to package it.
You know, liberals love the term quickies. So if you did like social quickies or collective quickies, that could grab their attention because they love socialism and collectivism.
So, it's so true.
Yeah.
I may have to change the name of it. Freedom Quickie. They might be like, oh, freedom propaganda.
Right, freedom. This is a Tea Party person.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Put a quickie in the hall, and you could start talking about the Freedom Hall and all of that. You could play with that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Michelle.
Well, I was already playing on the quickie word because, like, I know a lot of people like.
Hey.
Right.
You want to look at the cover and be like, hey now, and then look around to see if anyone notices them picking it up. That's
collective quickies or social quickies, and have like a cartoon bed on the front with like.
Great idea.
See?
And you
could do that, and they're like,
inside you could call it the Bed of Freedom.
Right.
Hey, let's all get in the Bed of Freedom.
It's a book. It's a book you can
but
read
then
in
I'll
bed.
be really attracting a lot of men. I almost think. Like, I was really trying to target.
Yeah, but you know what?
Like pink and like lacy, right?
Okay.
Still attracting a lot of men.
Still attracting a lot of men.
Yeah, but you know what? True. If the message of liberty gets out, it's almost worth it sometimes.
Absolutely.
Michelle Liberman, thank you so much. Good luck with your speech later today.
Thank you, Sean.
And
Thanks
have
for having me.
Awesome time here at Freedom Fest, and we hope to see you next year.
Thank you. Definitely we'll be here.
You'll be listening to the SHR Media Network live from the floor of Freedom Fest 2016.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.